Welcome to Orchid Medley Chit Chat number 17, where I bring you a variety of orchids from my collection and we talk through what's going on with each one of them. Stay tuned for these orchids and more coming up at The Orchid Hut. Welcome back to the Orchid Hut. My name is Dana and thank you for tuning in today for another Orchid Medley Chit Chat video. It's been a couple of months since I've done one of these. I think the last Chit Chat video was at the beginning of January, and my goodness, somehow we have already managed to make our way into mid-March. The first thing that I want to talk about today in this video is our weather in Southeast Texas. And then I'm going to talk about the orchids that are going to be leaving my collection. We'll take a little break and I'll clear some of this out from the camera and we will talk more specifically about some of the orchids that I want to show you today. So first of all, the weather. You know, back on February 2nd, which is our traditional Groundhog's Day, Puxatawny Phil did predict that spring would be here early, and I do believe that darn groundhog was correct. You know, in the last week we have had temperatures in the mid 80 degree Fahrenheit, which is quite warm for March. However, as I'm looking ahead on the weather forecast, we are going to have at least one more night that drops into the upper 40 degrees Fahrenheit. In which case, the few orchids that I do have outside, and it's just a handful, I will need to bring those into the garage where I can keep it a good 10 degrees warmer. The only orchids that I have outside right now are my Grammatophyllum, which is just a huge plant. The Stanhopea is outside. I believe my Phalaenopsis pulcherrima is out there, but they're the larger orchids, and you know, it just takes me a few minutes to bring those into the garage as needed. So, you know, it's getting warm very, very quickly. I'm going to try my hardest to not put anything outdoors until I have addressed whatever issues it may have. You know, there are still a few that need to be repotted. I will definitely try to make videos for those. Some are ready to go outside as is, but I don't want to put them out and then have to bring them back in for maintenance of any sort. So I am going to try to be strategic and save my steps going in and out of the house. Then, you know, next, you know, kind of this is a great time of year, and it's a hard thing to do, but it's a great time of year to really cull through any orchids that just need to leave your collection. You know, maybe they haven't done well for a number of years. Maybe they are mature in size, but they've never bloomed for you. For whatever reason, they're difficult to take care of. They've been problematic. You know, really think through each one, and it's a great time of year to kind of cull through your collection and decide what needs to go. For me, it's not too bad this year, but one of the orchids that is definitely going to go is this Cymbidium Golden Elf Sundust. And I have tried and tried and tried with this one for a number of years, and over the winter it has just completely succumbed. What I noticed last year was that the new growths were sort of fewer in number and getting smaller, so it was like 2 or 3 growths would die back and there would then only be 2 to replace it, and then something would die and only 1 would replace it. So I was like losing ground on this orchid, just left, right, and center. And so now, you know, it's gone. I will probably, you know, save this pot just if in the future I need to use it for something else. I'll save the stake, I'll save the little clip here, but the plant and the media will be going in the trash because, yep, it's done. All right, now the next 2 orchids that I want to talk about are these 2. Now these were borderline leaving my collection, and now that it's really in front of the camera, you're probably wondering what in the world happened to that. And not only that one, but this one as well. Okay, so these 2 were sort of borderline going to be leaving my collection. this one, because even though it had a spike last year, it blasted. A lot of people say that they can just grow these almost like weeds, you know, and they just sort of take over an area and just grow very easily. For me, not so much. I was going to give this one another chance, but if you watched my video short from the other day, the hailstorm, well, I thought this one was protected. It was up against the house under the eave of the roof, and I thought it would be okay, but that hail was flying about like bullets, and you can see a lot of mechanical damage where the hail bruised the orchid, bruised the pseudobulbs. The leaf on this one is not too bad, but if you look at this other one, the same thing happened. The hail was flying about. The leaves are shredded in certain cases. You can even see some of the other leaves from the trees that were just shredded and sort of landed in the pot here. You know, this is a lot of mechanical damage from the hail. And, you know, the orchid may not survive this because it does introduce the opportunity for bacteria and other things to sort of take over this plant. And it's, you know, got a lot of wounds to heal, basically, and it's going to weaken the plant overall. This is not an orchid that has particularly done well for me, so I'm not terribly saddened if I lose both of these because of the hailstorm. But, you know, just goes to show that if you're growing outside, when Mother Nature becomes vicious, she usually wins. All right, so let's set these over to the side. I am just going to kind of see how that goes and monitor those two orchids. All right, we're going to take a quick little break here, and I'm going to be back with these 3 orchids as well as a couple of others where I have filmed clips for them. Okay, be right back. Okay, so before we talk about the 3 orchids in front of the camera here, I did want to show you a couple of clips that I have taken from different growing areas around the Orchid Hut. And the first one that I want to show you is my catasetum. This is a Fred Clark After Dark, and it is the first one to awake from dormancy. And you can see the new little growth there, as well as the new root tips beginning to form. Now, I repotted this one a few weeks ago, and that was a good thing, and now I don't even want to pick up the pot and jostle it because those little root tips are so very precious, and you know, don't want to have any kind of water near them, no mist, and you don't want to do anything that would possibly disturb those root tips at this point. So I didn't even move it to bring it in front of the camera. I just did the little clip because I didn't want to disturb it. My other orchids that are catasetums or, you know, related to catasetums have not woken up yet, but hopefully they will soon. The next one that I want to show you is my Dendrobium nestor. It is completely, well, almost completely leafless now. It maybe has 1 or 2 green leaves left on it. There is one very long, well-grown cane on this Dendrobium that is filled with buds. And I am able to tell on some of the other canes that there may be buds coming, but I will be getting at least 1 cane to bloom very nicely. You know, I think the trick to this one over the winter was to just give it very, very bright grow light, like you saw in the little clip there. So I'll be excited to share that one with you when it's a first-time bloomer. Now, the next one that I want to show you is this Phalaenopsis here. And I had this orchid on a community post, and I showed you a picture with a little white arrow, and there was a little something emerging from the stem, and we were sort of predicting whether it would be a root or a bloom spike. Well, orchids can fool you, because that little bud was neither. I think we at the time kind of agreed that it would be a bloom spike, but look at what it really is. It is another basal growth. Now, this particular crown right here was the quote-unquote terminal crown. Doesn't mean that it's going to die anytime soon, but no new growth is coming from this one. Last year it produced this basal growth, which just took off like a weed and grew rather large in a hurry. And now the original crown is sending up another basal growth right down here. Now it's got the tiniest little bit of damage to this leaf. There must have been a critter in the grow room. But what I have done is I've put a little bit of sphagnum moss around the base of that, because over time that one will generate a root system for itself. But for right now, it's sharing the root system from the original crown. Okay, so very interesting. Just when you think you know what an orchid is going to do, it will surprise you and it will do something else. Now, just to stay in line with Phalaenopsis orchids, I wanted to show you this particular spike right here. This is the orchid that had not bloomed for me in several years. In fact, I don't think it had bloomed for me ever since I had purchased it a number of years ago. It is a branched spike, so you can see, that some of the buds are a tiny bit crowded because the branching part of the spike is kind of colliding with the main part or the primary part of the spike. But the thing that is most interesting to me about this one is that I cannot believe that I actually purchased this orchid, because the flower is attractive. It has sort of a bit of I would say almost a yellow-green type bloom, but it wouldn't have ever been, I don't think, like a favorite color of mine, as far as like what I would have purchased in a Phalaenopsis. So now I'm beginning to question if somehow this one had a different bloom when I originally purchased it, if possibly it was maybe partly dyed or something that made the bloom look different, and now it has kind of like gone back to its, original color. Some of the petals and sepals have a bit of a green tinge. So in a way it's unique, but at the same time I'm really just wondering why I purchased it. Now I am going to put a link in the upper right hand corner of the screen for this one, because this one was the ultimate Phalaenopsis repot that I did a couple of years back, and it's a very detailed video about how to repot a Phalaenopsis with a lot of air roots. So I'll put a link in the upper right hand corner of the screen for that one. Okay, now the final orchid in my Orchid Medley Chit Chat video. This was formerly known as an Ascosenda orchid, and they have since been reclassified into Vanda. So this is now Vanda Latta Gold. And it's a bit of a miniature when you look at it, compared to other much larger Vandas. Now, when I purchased this a couple of years ago, I did know that it was a mature plant because I could see where spikes had previously formed. And when I purchased it from the grower, he said, if you can get this to bloom once a season, you're doing really, really good. And if you can get it to bloom twice in a season, you have really found the exact conditions that this orchid loves. And so for the last couple of years, I haven't been able to get it to bloom at all. So I thought, well, I'm going to need to change things up, try something different, see if I can get it to bloom. So what I did over the winter is I put it about 4 inches away from one of my really good grow lights. And you can tell on the top of the leaves here that some anthocyanin is developing, the little purple spots here, which is an indication that this orchid is getting the amount of light that it receives. I also cut back on the watering just a tiny bit. Did not keep it dry, but soaked it maybe once a week, misted it maybe once a week. Definitely not the copious amounts of water that I give this orchid during the growing season. So there it sat all winter, very, very close to the grow lights. Well, can you see? Lo and behold, I am beginning to develop some bloom spikes here. There's one, And I don't know if I have even found them all yet, but let me see if I can keep turning the plant to show you. Right here beneath my finger will be another. And I believe there is a third, and I may or may not be able to find it for you because they are still somewhat buried down inside the fans. Maybe you can see it and maybe I can't. Oh, here it is, right here. So there's another one right below my finger there. All right, so it's going to have at least 3 spikes, hopefully more, and I'm really looking forward to being able to share this one with you as a first-time bloomer. Okay, if you enjoyed this Orchid Medley Chit Chat, please give this video a thumbs up. The subscribe button is coming up in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and don't forget the notifications bell to let you know when I've posted something new. Thank you all so much for watching, and talk to you in the next video.